The sickle moon had just slipped below the western horizon, when the file of mounted men emerged from the trees. There were 10 of them in all, and they pushed forward a few paces, until they crested the ridge looking down to Castle Araluen. The rider at the centre of the line held one hand in the air in the universal sign to halt, and the line of riders drew rein, watching the castle. The horses snuffled impatiently. They sensed that the massive building meant shelter and water and feed, and they were impatient for all three. The rider to the right of the man who had signalled leaned forward attentively in his saddle, studying the open ground before them. It sloped down initially from the ridge, then began to rise again toward the castle, dotted here and there with clumps of trees and shady arbours. For the most part, the ground was open, and a rider crossing it would be within full view, if anyone were watching. And the likelihood was, someone was always watching. But now the open parkland looked deserted. Any potential watchers would be within the castle itself, and that was where the small party of armed and mail-clad riders was expected. Most of the castle's windows were in darkness, as would be usual at this late hour. There were beacon fires in braziers set at regular intervals along the walls, and 2 torches flickered at either side of the gate, which was now closed and locked against intruders. "It all looks normal, my lord," the rider said quietly. The man beside him nodded. "I'd expect it to, even if it's not." Both men spoke in Gallic. As they hesitated, a yellow lantern was exposed on the walls above the huge gate and drawbridge, spilling its light down the granite walls of the entryway. "And there's the signal," the leader said. He turned to a rider on his other side. "Jules, make the reply." The man he had addressed had flint and tinder ready, and a lantern hung from his saddle-bow. It took him a few moments to light a handful of tinder, then to press the resulting flame to the wick of the lantern. As the tiny flame took, he closed the front of the lantern, which was made from blue glass. He held the light high, letting the blue gleam spread out over the small group. A few seconds later, the light on the castle walls moved slowly from left to right, then back again, repeating the action 3 times. "That's the all clear," the leader said, nudging his spurs into the side of the horse he rode and moving forward. The line of riders followed him, dropping into 2 files as they went, with the leader and the first knight who had spoken at the front. They moved at a slow trot, their horses' hooves making little sound on the soft ground. As they reached the bottom of the first slope and began to climb toward the castle, the horses naturally slowed a little, and the riders urged them on to greater speed. They heard the massive clanking of a large engine, and a slit of light showed at the top of the drawbridge, gradually growing wider as it opened. The huge bridge thudded down by the time they were 30 meters away. The riders could see that the portcullis was still lowered, barring access to the castle yard. The lead riders urged their horses to the beginning of the drawbridge and halted. A mail-clad man-at-arms stepped through a small gate at the side of the portcullis and crossed the bridge toward them. He was armed with a halberd and wore a long sword at his waist. His mail armour gleamed dully in the light of the beacons set either side of the drawbridge. The leader of the group looked up at the massive dark walls towering above him. He had no doubt that he was covered by several bowmen. This being Araluen, they would be armed with longbows, not crossbows, and they would all be expert shots. The man-at-arms stopped a few meters short of the group. "Do you have the password?" he asked quietly. The lead rider shifted slightly in his saddle. "Pax inter regis," he said in the ancient tongue. peace between kings. The foot soldier nodded and turned back to the castle, raising his right arm in a signal to the men at the portcullis. Slowly, the massive frame began to rise into the air, the movement accompanied by a distant clanking inside the gatehouse. When it was well clear of the bridge, the foot soldier waved the group forward. "Go ahead," he said.